Hola, amigas. It's Andrea here, your co host of the Latina Leadership Podcast. I'm glad we're going to be talking about social media strategy today. So, really excited about this conversation. But before we get into it, the Latina Entrepreneurship Conference is already coming up less than a month. So, make sure to get your tickets now at latinaconference.com if you haven't so already. It's a steal. Don't wait. The deadline to get the tickets is September 19th. So do not wait till the day before the conference to get your ticket. Get it now while you still can. So many things included: the brunch at the Rustic, keynote speakers, amazing sessions, Score Houston partnership, you name it, a lot of things included. So please do not miss out in being part of this amazing conference. Us at the Latina Leadership Podcast, we put so much work into making this conference as accessible, as amazing as possible for y'all to enjoy. So please do not miss out. Now, going into the conversation of social media strategy, I know a lot of you kind of know I'm a little bit, covering for LLP when it comes to social media strategy. If you see a lot of the social media posts we're doing, a lot of my mind's behind that. So I'm just going to give you a little bit of advice, a little bit of research I've done, as well as think there's so many things you have to think about strategy, and it comes to your brand, and comes to being a business leader, an entrepreneur. Sometimes you're the only one behind that social media strategy. So I'm going to give you a little tidbits, a little advice that I have in terms of what I've done for social media strategy. So one statistic I do want to point out right now is entrepreneurs and leaders must strategize on social media, as 90% of small business leverage it, with 78% of shoppers researching brands online before buying. You know, especially when it comes to social media strategy, you do have to be visible, especially if you're dependent on your audience online to find you. Please create a strategy, understand your audience members, put yourself in their positions. Also, like, understanding the different types of content you can make. There's video, there's graphic, there's platforms like Threads where it's primarily just text. There's different types of social media platforms, and you also need to pick and choose which ones relate more to your audience. So, as a brand, you need to reflect on yourself. Okay, who are my audience? Are my audience older? Are they professionals? Are they younger people? Are they Gen Z? Figuring out those age ranges and seeing what type of social media platforms they are more likely on. You need to get on there. And sometimes you can also pick and choose kind of what social media platforms you want to be part of, especially by creating accounts, going through there, seeing competitors are there, seeing what type of brands are utilizing that, and utilizing those social media platforms, and how they utilize them. That's very important, especially dependent on the industry you are, what type of brand you are, what audience members you are. Do you sell stuff online? Do you offer services? Are your services in person? Do you depend on being on a certain location? Or are you dependent on having an online shop and being virtual? So a lot of those things you have to take consideration when picking what social media platform you're doing, what type of content you want to put out there, and then also understanding that social media platforms change. One thing I want to highlight, especially we're live streaming on Instagram and on Facebook. So if you notice, the platform changes constantly. Meta changes constantly. Like right now, you can now repost on Instagram, and reposting is something similar to what TikTok has done. And I always recommend people to see these changes, test these changes, especially, we've been testing the reposting on Instagram. It's been really helpful too in capturing new audiences. So taking advantage of those new features and understanding and tailoring your content to understand and test those new features. Like, one thing we've also been testing is voiceovers. So now with Instagram and Meta moving towards being SEO focused, so SEO, search engine optimization, if you don't know, is also now becoming search engine optimization, which used to be more for website and search engine stuff for websites, is now being more vital. It used to be a little bit part of social media, but now it's more vital now that Meta's, instead of going from is going from hashtags to search engine optimization, where keywords and phrases are going to be so important. So one thing that I suggest people testing out is understanding now SEO, search engine optimization, especially if you're involved in social media. Take a quick course, look at research online, seeing how gets affected by search engine optimization, because now Meta is transferring towards search engine optimization. So I always suggest people to like see where the algorithm's changing, where these platforms are changing, and what seems to be the trend that social media is transferring to build out your strategy or adjust your strategy accordingly. Like one thing we've been doing is, doing voiceovers, testing the audio, see what makes a difference, changing the copy and captions. How does that affect how it translates to our audience? So a lot of social media is a lot of testing, a lot of experimenting. You can't expect your social media strategy, especially if you're starting out or you're barely building out or you're transferring your brand to something new. You can't expect it to start working immediately. Sometimes I usually give a frame of like 3 to 4 months usually is when you start kind of figuring out what your social media strategy is, what type of content your audience tends to like, what type of content doesn't perform as well, what are the best times your audience seems to be engaging online, how many times you need to post per day. It really is a testing ground when it comes to social media strategies, but don't be afraid of failing when it comes to social media, because that's also growth, because okay, what I did didn't work. So now I can move on to the next thing and test out these new things. Now that I know that doesn't work, I'm able to see, okay, let me try something new. Let me try something different, completely opposite from this, and see if this works. And, a lot of social media strategy comes with testing things and learning. It's a lot of like the proper professional term would be like A/B testing. You're testing different things and seeing which one performs the best. And when it comes to social media, it's testing what your audience likes, testing out different formats. Do I want to do a voiceover? Do I just want to record myself like UGC, user generated style, just like recording myself, just organically? Do I want to do graphics? Do I want to do carousels? Do I want to just do pure reels? I always suggest people like mix things around. Your audience also doesn't want to see the same type of content all the time. They want to see something different. They want to see different things, different aspects of your brand. And if you're able to appeal to them on that point, you're going to be able to better connect with your audience. Also, don't do pure promotion. Sometimes your audience wants to understand you as a brand. They want to connect with you as a brand, and that's why like doing a lot of organic posts is really important. Either depending on your brand, you could do educational posts, you could do important statistics that relate to your industry. You can there's so many things you could do in terms of organic. It can even be behind the scenes stuff of like what you're working on. People love to see and get and feel involved in what your brand is doing. So there's different ways to appeal and influence that into your social media strategy to be able to connect with your audience. So I always suggest people, please look at your brand, put yourself in the perspective of your audience. And even sometimes, let's say you're a type of brand that can tables at places or talks with the community. That is sometimes the best way to like understand your audience. Like you're talking to them. Like for us, when Latina Leadership Podcast and Amigas and Friends Network, when we go and table at events and we get to meet y'all, it's some of the best ways we get to understand and see what we're doing right and what we could do better. I always suggest, if you're a brand or you're a small business, talk to your customers, talk to people who pass by your booth, because sometimes that in-person interaction will help you better your brand, because you're meeting that consumer, you're meeting the people interested in your brand, and you're understanding better, and taking those little instances and that little bit of feedback and implementing it into your social media strategy, or like, hey, this is the type of feedback I'm getting. Maybe I should switch my messaging a little bit and see how that goes. That really takes it the long way, because with social media strategies, like it's not like I'm just going to stick to one thing and hope for the best. No, social media strategy, you do got to be a little bit flexible. You have to run with what works, and you have to move away with what doesn't work. And it is a lot of flexibility. It is a lot of taking in a lot of data, taking in a lot of feedback, and just researching and looking at your audience. It's a lot of that, but I highly recommend for people to do it. It is completely worth it, because the more you flex, the more you understand your strategy, the more you're able to understand your audiences, the better your social media content is going to be, the better you're going to connect with your audience, and the better your brand's going to grow. Because the thing with social media strategy, there's never going to be a perfect game in strategy. Social media platforms change, audience changes, consumer needs and interactions change constantly. So you're constantly having to be adaptable, but at the same way, being a brand, being an entrepreneur, you have to be adaptable. You're running the business, or being a business, you have to be adaptable. And it's the same concept when it comes to social media. So I always recommend people be adaptable. See what works, see what doesn't work, see what you can do. Because sometimes, as an entrepreneur, sometimes it's just you doing social media. You don't have a marketing team, Sometimes it's you having to run the game. So you also want to see where you're able to test and see, not overstretch yourself, but see what you can do personally. Like, if I'm going out to an event or I'm preparing for something, I'm preparing a product, maybe I should, film a little bit of content, or, write something down to something I want to post based off of this, or I went to an event, let me film something at the event. Maybe I can get a customer interaction. Somebody buys something, I can ask them, hey, do you want to film a quick video and be featured on our social media? Things like that. It could be as simple as that, but that really helps you connect with your audience and give them a versatile bit of like content that they see from you. And it's really helpful. So going into a little bit of research, when it comes to like brand discovery, like 78% of shoppers research social media before purchasing, and 58% first discover new businesses on these platforms. Especially if you use TikTok specifically, I'll mention like a lot of people search things up on TikTok to see people review stuff or see people talk about things. And it's funny, you used to like think hashtags were the way to find things, but now as I was saying, social media has transitioned to search engine optimization, which is more in terms of website and like looking up stuff, that we're seeing this change in social media. So that's when keywords and like, having certain keywords in your audio and what other people are posting about your brand really matter. Because when it comes to like, let's say I'm searching up shoes, specifically shoes, or like there's a specific type of shoe I want, like, heeled shoes, short heel shoe, kitten heel shoes. I want to, if I'm selling shoes, I want my brand to show up with that. I want somebody to be reviewing that specific type of shoe, because the consumer is going to be looking for that. So let's say, your brand is shoes. What type of shoes am I selling, and what would my consumers be looking and searching for in terms of that product? That's where search engine optimization really comes in handy, because we're seeing this transition too in Instagram, where people are now searching for certain things. There's less dependency on the hashtag, and there's more dependency on the search option of it. So that's one thing in terms of social media strategy, you had to take consideration these platform changes, this user change of searching for stuff now, not on the web page, but on the actual social media platform. So those are things you have to take consideration as a brand. How are these platforms changing? How can I, with its innovation, innovate as well in my strategy? So those are things to take into consideration. As I've already talked about, customer engagement. Customers who engage with brands on social media spend 35 to 40% more, and 76% are likely to recommend brands after positive interactions. So let's say you're running your social media page and you see a comment. Like that comment, message something on that comment. Engagement is so important, especially your audience members will feel seen. They're like, okay, somebody's recognizing what I'm posting, like what I'm replying to. And that's incredibly important, especially in platforms like Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. It's really, really important to constantly keep up that engagement. And when it comes to business growth, 93 marketers have seen increased traffic from their social media efforts, and leaders expect social media to increase in share of their business budget. We're seeing a transition where social media and having good social media is like super, super now like important when it comes to brand and when it comes to business. We're seeing a transition of marketing being more dependent on social media and the utilization of influencers, content creators. We're seeing this transition where brands are now starting to care more about social media than, website, which is really interesting transition that we're seeing. But it makes sense because users are more likely to go to the social media platform than they are to a website. So those are just things we have to take consideration and be able to be adaptable and understand when it comes to like constructing our social media strategy. I may have a website, but I have to understand that my social media platform will likely be the middleman between them going to my website, them discovering me, and then the transition of them going to the website. So it's like understanding where your website kind of falls into that. How can I integrate people getting that call to action to go to my website within my social media strategy? It's like a lot of things. I know this is like a bit overwhelming because it's a lot of things I'm going over, but it's a lot of things to take consideration. That's why social media strategy, I'm not gonna lie, is not that easy because there's so many things to keep in mind. But these things are so essential to mastering that strategy and to keep improving that strategy as well. So another statistic, customer care, 88% of business leaders view social media as critical for customer care and capturing sentiment and feedback. We're seeing that industry sentiment of seeing social media as really detrimental to making sure a business is successful. So make sure that you understand how important your social media strategy is. Don't focus solely on I'm just going to update that website and hope that's for the best. No, take consideration what you can do with social media, how you can appeal with your audience, where you can find your audience, and also understanding the different types of content you could create depending on where you are as a brand, depending who you are in the industry, depending how you sell your brand or your service. Lots of things that can take consideration. So don't try to post. This is a rookie mistake. Don't try to post everything on every social media platform, because some social media platform will not fit for your brand. And that's fine. That's why you need to understand your audiences, understand your brand, understand where you stand, understand where your audience members will be researching you, where they will try to find you, and making sure you're in those platforms. Also understanding where your competitors stand. I also want to see what my competition is doing and what platforms they are on and what they're doing with their audience, because that's also a learning process too. Because you can see, okay, I like what they're doing with this, but I prefer to do this. Or, oh, that's really interesting that they're doing this on this platform. Maybe I should test something a little different, but it seems to be working for them, so I should probably try it out as well. There's no wrongdoing in looking at the competition, seeing what they're doing, and seeing what you can improve and what you can learn from them. In terms of social media strategy, you always have to be looking at what the trend is, what are the changing platforms, what are the user changes as well, because user interaction with social media will always change. It will always be shifting around. So taking those things into consideration will be essential in your social media strategy. Also, video dominance. Sadly, social media has transitioned from, the early days of MySpace and Facebook, where it was just most texting and mostly posting, to now transitioning to just purely video content. We're seeing Reels, TikTok, UGC content, user-generated content being some of the most important ways for social media for you to get to an audience quickly, because it's like, video is so much easier for audience to view and to process than an actual text. It's an interesting change in user dynamics, but that's something you have to take consideration. Sometimes reels just tend to do better, but sometimes they take longer to create. So if you're a beginning entrepreneur, I would first try to do something organic, behind the scenes, film something, quickly edit. You can use tools like CapCut that are really easy to edit, video, and just test things around, especially if you don't have a design team. Editing is kind of hard. I'm not gonna lie. And just seeing that, or just taking raw, talking to the camera. Sometimes people really enjoy that. If you feel like you have the personality and strong personality of that, do it. Don't feel scared of recording yourself. You're the one representing the brand. Especially if you're an entrepreneur or business leader, you're the one representing the brand. You got to put yourself out there. And I know it's hard, especially right now I'm in the front of the camera and talking essentially to y'all. But you have to put yourself out there. You're representing the brand. You have to make sure that you're representing the brand correctly and properly, but also making sure that you're engaging with that audience and connecting with what their needs are. So put yourself out there. Sometimes as business people, we have to put ourselves in, outside our comfort zone, and that's fine, but that also helps us grow as people. So I think that's all I'm going to go into social media strategy. Don't hesitate to test something new. That's the biggest thing with social media. We're so scared of testing new things, but that's the name of the game of social media strategy. Testing new things, seeing what goes, seeing what doesn't. And, that's the way you improve and the way you keep growing when it comes to social media. So, where else we're going to talk about social media, marketing, and strategy is going to be our Latina Entrepreneurship Conference. You do not want to miss out. We're going to have sessions. You're actually going to see me as a speaker talking about marketing. So you got a little teaser here of of me being a speaker. But yeah, do not miss out. Latino Entrepreneurship Conference. Get your ticket. The deadline to get is September 19th. September 19th. Don't wait till the day before to get that ticket. Get it now, man. Get it before it's too late. You do not want to miss out. You'll see me as a speaker. You'll see amazing marketing panels, incredible sessions, morning and afternoon. Even if you want to see finance, development, you'll also have our keynote speaker, Dr. Lara Murillo, during the Rustic Brunch. So many things included. Do not miss out. So I'll see you on the next one. Bye, amigas.